Celebration of Reading 2020, a vision of literacy for all. A special program brought to you by the Barbara Bush Houston Literacy Foundation and made possible through the generosity of KPRC TV, Phillips 66, Kwan Foundation, and many other generous supporters. Featuring interviews with best-selling authors Jean Becker, H.W. Brands, John Grisham, Kevin Kwan, Kathy Reichs, with special remarks from President George W. and Mrs. Laura Bush, Barbara Bush Literacy Foundation co-founders Neil and Maria Bush, and Houston Mayor Sylvester Turner, and performances by Grammy-nominated singer-songwriter Mary Griffin, accompanied by the Texas Southern University Choir, award-winning comedian Preacher Lawson, and legendary recording artist Lee Greenwood performing with the Houston Children's Chorus, hosted by Emmy Award-winning evening news anchor Dominique Saxa. And now, please welcome the 43rd President of the United States, George W. Bush, and Mrs. Laura Bush.
Good evening, and welcome to a celebration of reading. As a former teacher and librarian, I'm especially happy to join all of you book lovers for this special virtual event.
My mother knew that literacy was essential for communities to thrive. She dedicated much of her life to promoting family literacy and investing in programs that help children and adults learn to read.
Reading was Bar's passion, and through the work of the Barbara Bush Houston Literacy Foundation, her legacy lives on. Tonight's program will be a Barbara Bush-style celebration where authors come together to educate and inspire us through their books.
Reading is empowering, transformative, liberating, and joyful. Laura and I share Mom's belief that every American should have the right to experience the gift of reading. So tonight we join you in the promise of a brighter future for our fellow Americans. Thank you for supporting this important cause, and may God bless you all.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States and Mrs. Bush.
It is my pleasure to sign into law H.R. 751, the National Literacy Act.
I chose literacy because I honestly believe that if more people could read, write, and comprehend, we would be that much closer to solving so many of the problems that plague our nation. Polar Star was the brightest, liveliest bear cub in the entire Arctic. How will you feel sleeping without your teddy bear for the very first time?
Okay, quick. Back through the cave. Tiptoe, tiptoe, tiptoe. Back through the snowstorm. Woo, 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 woo.
The way a child learns to read starts at home. The parents are the first teachers, and it's just a wonderful way for children to begin to learn. Every single thing would be better in this world if more people could read, write, and comprehend.
And now, we're in for a very special evening.
Indeed we are. Good evening, everyone. I'm Dominique Saxa of KPRC Channel 2, and I'm honored to host this special commercial-free program in partnership with the Barbara Bush Houston Literacy Foundation. For many of us, reading plays an important part in our lives. Yet there are many adults in our community who need a second chance at learning how to read, and children who require additional support to become confident readers. During this show, you will learn about the work being championed by the Barbara Bush Houston Literacy Foundation to carry forth former First Lady Barbara Bush's vision of literacy for all. Tonight is also a celebration of the power of reading and the authors who change our lives through their books. One specific author thrills us with her gripping crime series. Dr. Kathy Reichs has led a successful dual life as a forensic anthropologist and New York Times #1 best-selling author. She recently joined me to discuss her latest book. Dr. Reichs, your resume is really a novel in itself. Your forensics work is world-renowned. You have written many best-selling thrillers, and you've inspired a TV series. We could talk about you all day today, but we do want to start with your latest book, A Conspiracy of Bones, which features a character familiar to your fans, Temperance Brennan. When you are writing about her and the cases that she is working on, how much of you is reflected in her?
Well, certainly professionally, she does what I did for many, many years. Her personality is her own, though. I'm told by readers, people who know me, that we share the same sense of humor, but she's got some quirks that we don't share.
In this book, there is this power struggle that's going on because she's working on a forensics case that she's told to stay out of while battling a health issue at the same time. Talk a little bit about that struggle.
Yeah, one of the themes of A Conspiracy of Bones is this idea of how do we determine what's real and what's not real? Because anyone can get on the internet and say anything they want. So one of the themes on the broader level of the book is, how do we figure out what is real and what is not real, especially sometimes when misinformation is coming from people in positions of authority? And then on a personal level, for Tempe, she has had this unruptured aneurysm, surgically corrected, and she's fine. But she's having some migraine headaches, and she has periods when she can't, for the first time ever in her life, completely rely on her own perceptions. And that's really troubling for her to have to determine on her own personal level what is real and what is not real.
And that is a big parallel between your life and Temperance's, is the talk about the health issue and the aneurysm. Was that a difficult decision to write that into the book? Because it's based on your own personal experience.
Yeah, and I don't have these lingering issues of, perceptive capability that she does. But I did have, it was serendipitously discovered while looking at something else that I had this little aneurysm, and it went for several years and then it changed. So my neurosurgeon said, you know what, it's time that we go in and we correct it. So I normally don't put personal things like that into the books, but I thought, well, I had to go through this, so I think my character should go through this too.
What motivates you to keep going, to keep writing about it, and to keep pushing forward in your line of work?
Well, I think I've said it many, many times. I work with the dead, but I work for the living. People want answers, and they may not like the answer that we specialists are able to give them, but they'd rather know than not know. So if a missing family member is identified, it does give, it's a cliche, but as I say in the book, cliches exist for a reason. It does give them closure to have that knowledge. So you always keep that in the back of your mind, closure for the families, but also justice for the victim. If it is someone that's dead because of violence caused by another, and not everything I look at is a murder case, but if it is, then someone should be brought to answer for that.
Yeah, I can see how helping people would be such a driving force in what you do. And I'm so curious about the role that writing plays in your life. Is it cathartic? Is it a hobby? What role does it serve for you?
It's not a hobby, for sure. I've been doing minimally a book a year, and there was a period where I was doing a young adult book a year, a Temperance Brennan book a year, and a screenplay for the show, for Bones. So it's definitely a full-time occupation now.
You mentioned the TV series Bones, which is based on your books. And I'm curious, as an author who puts in such rich detail in literature, to then work with producers and directors in figuring out what you're going to take from the book and condense and actually make into a TV show. How is that for you?
Well, I worked as a producer, but my main role was to work with the writers. I'm not one of these authors that's going to say they took my work and they ruined it. I had such a good experience. What I did mainly was work with the writers, initially just answering all their questions and kind of keeping the science honest. We took some liberties for the magic of television, but we always would ask the question, well, is it plausible? We didn't just make things up. It had to be reasonable and plausible. And then later, as I was more familiar with the process, I did start writing screenplays myself. That was so much fun because it's different from writing a novel.
Oh, completely. And I'm sure that tapped into a whole other aspect of your capability, which is exciting to explore. You know, I think your fans will be excited to hear that there's another book in the works. Can you talk a little bit about that?
I can, and it's called the Bone Code. And oh gosh, what can I tell you about it? I've done a lot of research into human genome editing. Maybe I'll just leave it at that.
Wow. You are an amazingly intelligent and busy woman, and all your books are so well done and well written and intriguing. And I wish you continued success and creativity and all that comes with putting together such fascinating stories.
Thank you. And a shout out to my sister and all my nieces and nephews who live in Houston.
Barbara Bush believed that parents play a vital role in serving as their child's first and most important teachers, and that when parents and children learn together, they grow together. For these reasons, we have been investing in high-quality early literacy and family literacy programs aimed at ensuring children enter kindergarten reading ready and become proficient readers by the end of the 3rd grade.
The key to a student's success is not only the education that they receive in our school system, but it's the support that they receive at home. When you think about the Read and Rise family initiative, we're showing parents how to work with their child at home. Sometimes our parents have deficit areas as it relates to literacy as well. So at times we're teaching not only children, but also their parents.
Read and Rise involves a series of workshops that provides families with hands-on activities to build their child's early literacy skills. Over the past couple of years, through a partnership among the Foundation, the Houston Independent School District, and the Houston Area Urban League, hundreds of families have been empowered with the knowledge, skills, and tools to not only engage their child and support their academic growth at home, but also foster a culture of literacy success within the school and the community.
His writing centers on conflict, drama, and some of the most compelling characters to ever land on the pages of a book. And what makes his stories even more thrilling is that they're true. Best-selling historian H.W. Brands here to talk now about history, about literacy, and his brand new book, The Zealot and the Emancipator. Dr. Brands, thank you for being here.
Delighted to be with you.
You have said in the past that if you learn one thing from history, it's always more complicated than you thought. And I think this book is just your latest example of that.
Well, thank you. Yeah. So I've been teaching and writing about history for, a long time now. And the more I do it, the more I realize the closer you get to any subject, the more complicated it is. Now, for some people, that's a drawback. Some people like their history to come in easy moral stories, and they can pick out the black from the white. Now, I happen to have an opposite taste in this, so the more complicated it gets, the more interested I am. But I have to say that sometimes with my students, perhaps with my readers, it's a job to try to get them to appreciate the complications. But one of the things it should remind us is that life is harder than we think.
The conflict in this book is complex because you have two historical figures with a similar goal of confronting slavery, but radically different ideas on how to do it.
Exactly. So the fundamental question of American politics, one could say the fundamental question of American public morality by the middle of the 19th century was slavery. What do you do about it? I focus on two people. Both of them are ardently anti-slavery. John Brown, the abolitionist, and Abraham Lincoln, of course, would become president of the United States. And they wrestled with this question. It's a question I've posed to my students, a question I pose very directly in the book. What does a good man, what does a good person do when his country is involved in a great evil? What do you do about it? Brown took up arms. He wanted to fight slavery directly and literally. He took up arms and waged war against slaveholders and against the institution of slavery. Abraham Lincoln was a politician. He was a lawyer. He thought in other directions. He also believed that progress in the United States on the subject of slavery would only come through the political system. Lincoln believed that the problem could be resolved peacefully, but he felt that people like John Brown in particular, the most celebrated, the most notorious abolitionist by the late 1850s, was making the problem that much more difficult.
Let's fast forward to today now. And do you ever feel like people often try to want you to put current events into context in your books now and in the way you write?
Well, I have to work to get people to appreciate history as history. People are willing to say history might be interesting or important for what it tells us about the present. And so I'm often asked questions that are like, based on your study of history, who's going to win the election of 2020? Or something like this. And I say that historians venture from the past into the present and the future only at great peril. The reason that history doesn't tell us exactly what's going to happen is that the present is always like some aspect of the past, but never exactly like some aspect of the past. And so we never know until things happen whether it's more like the things that happened in the past or more unlike the things that happened. So you have to watch and see how it plays out. Now, of course, we historians then claim with the benefit of hindsight that once we know how it happened, then we'll explain why it was inevitable that it had to happen that way.
You've had tremendous success as an author. I think 2 times your pieces have been nominated or finalists for a Pulitzer Prize, yet you are still an educator at the Old 40 Acres there in Austin. Why is it important for you to maintain that role as an educator?
The way I look at what I do, I cannot usefully separate my teaching from my writing, because I think of my writing, I think of my readers as my extended classroom. And I think of my students as they're the ones that I get to try my ideas out on. And I will say that I take it as the highest compliment when students come into my class and they say at the end of the class, I'm a chemistry major, I'm an engineer, and I really didn't think I was going to like this class, but it became my favorite class. And I say, okay, great, that's exactly what I'm trying to do.
Mission accomplished, right?
And the other thing I should add about this, and I tell my students this, that history is this exceedingly accessible subject. If you can read, you can teach yourself history. The whole thing is, can that person become interested in it? So my job is to interest students. And then if I do interest them, they will read, and they can read history for the rest of their lives. Then the entire world of the past, the present, the future opens up to you.
Dr. Brands, thank you so much for the time, and thank you for your commitment to education.
It's my pleasure, and thank you for having me.
The Barbara Bush Houston Literacy Foundation's Young Professionals Group was founded in 2014. This organization was formed to gather young professionals and celebrate their love and passion for spreading the love of literacy in Houston. One of our signature service projects is the mentorship program that we have established at Jefferson Elementary. This is very important not only for the Young Professionals Group, but for the students that we serve.
I am a mentor at Jefferson Elementary. One of my students that I got to volunteer with all school year was Brianna, and as we progressed through the year, she became such a strong reader, and you could tell that she enjoyed reading, which actually made my heart the happiest because she was really having fun.
It helped a lot because I didn't know how to read like nothing, and when she came in my life, it was very fun.
Our students have developed a true love for literacy. This is something that we can see in them as they come obviously into the library, but when we see them on their own independent time at recess or in the hallways, they're sitting with their books and they're reading, not because someone's asking them to do so, but because they have a genuine attachment to the books and the stories that they're reading.
Join us as we read, lead, and serve our community and fulfill the promise of Barbara Bush's vision of literacy for all.
Good evening. I'm Neil Bush. Marie and I formed the Barbara Bush Houston Literacy Foundation 7 years ago to advance Mom's indelible literacy legacy and help more people across our city have a brighter future and a better life through the power of learning to read. It is alarming to us that nearly 1 in 3 Houston adults are functionally illiterate, and almost 40% of area 3rd graders fail to meet minimum reading standards year after year.
We believe this constitutes a crisis, one in which we must unite to solve as a community. Through the generosity of tonight's sponsors who invest in our programs, the hundreds of volunteers who give selflessly of their time, and the districts and community-based organizations with whom we partner, we are making a difference. But together, we can and we must do more.
Mom believed if you helped a person to read, then their opportunities in life would be endless. We invite you to become a point of light by serving as a volunteer or donating to change a life through the power of literacy. Thank you.
And now, please welcome Grammy-nominated singer-songwriter Mary Griffin and the Texas Southern University Choir under the direction of Dr. Kiana Williams.
I believe the children are our future. Teach them well and let them lead the way. Show them all the beauty they possess inside. Give them a sense of pride to make it easier. Let the children's laughter remind us how we used to be. Everybody's searching for a hero. People need someone to look up to. I never found anyone to fulfill my needs. A lonely place to be. And so I learned to depend on me. I decided long ago never to walk in anyone's shadow. If I fail, if I succeed, at least I live as I believe. No matter what they take from me, they can't take away my dignity. Because the greatest love of all is happening to me. I found the greatest love of all inside of me. The greatest love of all is easy to achieve. Learning to love yourself can be the greatest love of all. And if by chance that special day that you've been dreaming of leads you to a lonely place, find your strength in love.
The Ladies for Literacy Guild is a volunteer auxiliary group of the Barbara Bush Houston Literacy Foundation. As a dynamic and passionate group of nearly 400 members, we serve as a catalyst for advancing signature programs of the foundation and developing literacy initiatives to boost childhood reading success. 3 years ago, the Ladies Guild launched our first of 2 super libraries on wheels, the Curiosity Cruisers. In partnership with Harris County Public Library, the Curiosity Cruisers provide new books to children living in affordable housing communities and high-need neighborhoods. Specialized library staff engage children in fun reading activities and hands-on STEM programs such as 3D printing, coding, space exploration, and robotics. We are thrilled that a third Curiosity Cruiser will hit the streets in 2021 to instill a love of reading among children and foster a culture of reading success across our city. Guild members also serve as reading mentors to elementary school children. And in the wake of the pandemic, we launched #WeRead and #WeReadEspanol, a growing collection of more than 150 storytime videos for educators and families to enjoy and support at-home learning. On behalf of the Ladies for Literacy Guild, I invite you to learn more about our important work and join us in our quest to change the life stories of children through the power of literacy.
He writes about wealth, romance, and outrageous indulgence, but despite the extravagance of his stories, this international bestseller himself is quite down to earth. Kevin Kwan, it is my pleasure to talk to you about your latest book, Sex and Vanity. Thank you for joining us today.
It's so good to be here.
Kevin, I want to start off with your trilogy, your first trilogy of books, which included Crazy Rich Asians, which ended up turning out to be wildly popular. After starting with such a successful series, did you feel more pressure when going into this newest series?
Actually, it was the opposite. I think having that first success really kind of allowed me to be playful and just forget everything and just really have fun. I really wanted to write a fun summer romp that would make people laugh and give them an escape at this time. And I think it worked, not having to, think about success or be on a bestseller list.
I know a lot of Houstonians know you. You went to high school here, you went to college here, and back then you were actually doing a little bit of poetry writing. Did you ever dream that your story would unfold this way?
Never in my wildest dreams. I mean, you couldn't have made it up. But I think Houston really nurtured me, in terms of going to school here, learning the craft of writing. I was actually performing my poetry, in Houston at First Fridays, every, first Friday of the month. So it was a really great nurturing ground. And it's been amazing.
You grew up with wealth and around influential people. Did you have any initial concerns about writing satirical novels about the lifestyles of the rich and famous?
Not at all, because I do it with a lot of love, and I'm not trying to take anyone down. I'm not trying to expose any scandals. This is satire. I'm looking at a world and I'm trying to find meaning in it and trying to find connection. And people have loved it. In fact, there are some people I know who have claimed to have been in the book. And I take that as the ultimate compliment. They're not actually in the book. I don't even know who they are. There are a lot of people going around saying, "Oh, I'm this character. I'm Nick Young."
And you're like, if only you knew.
Exactly.
We heard you say in an interview a few years ago that you didn't want to be sort of typecast as the guy who only writes about crazy rich Asians, but that seems to be working pretty well for you so far. Do you have plans beyond this trilogy?
Well, this new book, Sex and Vanity, is my attempt to sort of pivot a little bit and spread my wings. There still are crazy rich Asians in the book, but now we also have a lot of crazy rich New Yorkers in the book and, and everything crazy in between. So I'm trying to challenge myself, and I'm also trying to showcase a whole new world of characters and all these new environments and social settings that hopefully readers will come to love.
Every character, Kevin, in your book is introduced, has an educational resume listed by their name. What prompted you to want to give that background to your readers?
It's a bit of a joke. It's a bit of a joke because I felt moving from Houston to New York, it was funny. I would meet all these people, young people my age who had just graduated from college. And within 3 minutes of meeting them, they would basically be name dropping their entire educational resume, from their private schools to going to Harvard or Princeton or Yale. And here I am, I went to University of Houston, and I'm proud of it. So it's pretty funny to meet these education snobs. So this was my way of kind of poking fun at them.
What advice do you have to young aspiring writers right now after coming as far as you have and starting where you started?
Well, this was advice that was given to me back in creative writing school. And I always tell new writers, write your truth. Don't be afraid to go crazy and don't censor yourself and don't think of what the audience will be or what publishers want or what agents want to see. Just because I think when you really are telling your truth, it resonates. People connect these stories. I never imagined my crazy story would find an audience, but here you go. It has.
Certainly has. A huge one.
Yeah. And I would say never in my wildest dreams did I think this would happen, that the book would cross over to become, a cultural movement in a way. It was never my intention. I was just trying to tell a very simple, hopefully very funny story that would amuse a few friends. And to see it translate the way it has and the lives it's affected. And, you know, even if you look at all the movies that have been coming out the last few years that have been, I think, benefiting from the Crazy Rich Asians wave, you know, the success of the movie, I think, helped spawn other movies that, you know, were allowed to be made because studios, Hollywood finally took notice and said, hey, this can work. You know, we can have movies that really showcase diverse international casts telling very, very different stories. People want this. So it's very, very meaningful to me that, you know, my book and the movie has had any effect in helping this.
Are there any more movies to come?
Oh, yeah. You know, we're working on the sequel to Crazy Rich Asians, and there's going to be a movie made of Sex and Vanity. Sony Pictures has picked up the option, and we're full steam ahead developing it.
We have so enjoyed talking with you. Any last word for our viewers and for your fans?
Well, you know, I'm just so thankful to Houston in particular, you know, for really nurturing me and for supporting me all these years.
Kevin, it's a pleasure to talk to you. Like I said, I'm a huge fan, and we really, really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Access to books in the home is essential to develop skilled, confident, and lifelong readers. Our My Home Library program enables children of low-income families to select books they want to read and keep, and we fulfill their wish through generous support from donors. Since we launched the program 3 years ago, more than 66,000 Houston area children have received their very own home libraries.
The beautiful thing about reading a book and picking up a book for the first time, especially as a young child, is that when you begin to read and you start to experience a different world beyond yours, you start to spread your wings and open up, and it's almost like you're coming out of a cocoon and experiencing life from a totally different perspective.
As schools and libraries remain closed or inaccessible for children and families amid the pandemic, the Foundation has accelerated and increased our efforts to empower children with books through our My Home Library program.
Learn more about My Home Library and how you can make a difference in the life of a child by empowering them with books to read and love.
Our next author is no stranger to the Bush family. She worked for President George H.W. and former First Lady Barbara Bush for more than 35 years, most recently as the president's chief of staff. KPRC's Frank Billingsley visited with Jean Becker to discuss her latest book about the life of the former First Lady.
What better place to sit and talk about books than in a public library with the author, Jean Becker, of this wonderful book, Pearls of Wisdom, First Lady Barbara Bush. Who came up with the idea, and how did you get all this together?
So the book was my idea. Every time those of us who knew and loved Barbara Bush would get together, inevitably the conversation would turn to, what did you learn from her? And this light bulb just went off one day. And I thought, oh my gosh, there is a book in that. She was, without a doubt, the biggest advice giver possibly in the history of the world.
Whether you wanted it or not.
Whether you wanted it or not. And as her son, her oldest son, George W. Bush, the 43rd president, says in the prologue, in the preface, he said, some would say mother was bossy. But as he pointed out, for those of us who got all that advice, we've been at a big advantage because we had the benefit of living our life according to the rules of Barbara Bush. And so it was time to share them. And I wanted to put her name on the book. I may be the first true ghostwriter.
Yeah, I don't see it anywhere.
But you know, it's her, some people were surprised by that, but it's her voice you hear in this book. It's not mine, it's hers. So I emailed her 5 kids. They were very enthusiastic and said they absolutely would help. And so then I just started emailing the most random people. It was like this. Oh, Reba McEntire. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, President Clinton.
Yeah.
Okay. It was just started people who would pop into my mind. Nobody said no.
What would her reaction be to this book? Because she didn't know you were going to write it.
Several people asked me if I asked her permission. Well, I didn't think of it until after she died.
Right.
But here's what I did, Frank, to make sure she was okay with it. All of the author's proceeds went to the Barbara Bush Foundation for Family Literacy, which is only fair.
Right.
And so then I knew that she would absolutely approve.
And she might be really pleased to know that the people to whom she gave this advice took it to heart.
Yes,
they
did.
remember it. They, like you say, they all answered your emails and they all had something to say.
Reba McEntire still seats her dinner parties based on the advice she got from Barbara Bush on how to seat a dinner party.
Yeah.
We took it to heart because Hers was a life well lived. And who were we to question her?
What was the most challenging part of this?
I hate to say this, it was a pretty easy book to do. I'm writing a book now about President Bush's post-presidency, and that's a lot more complicated. This book was like putting a puzzle together. I had all the pieces. I just needed to figure out how they fit together. And as you know, since you read the book, she was a great puzzler.
Right. Don't ever put the last piece in.
Don't ever put
She
the
wanted
last
to be
piece
that
in.
one.
Ever. I love that even Bob Gates said that. One of the most fearless people I know. When I asked Bob Gates if he had anything to contribute, he said, I once put the last puzzle piece in. Never again.
That's right.
It was like putting a puzzle together. It was a work of pure joy.
She had two succinct parts of her life, public parts, the political part, and then the very open volunteer part.
They were big believers in giving back. And of course, for her biggest cause and passion was literacy. Like 2 days before she died, I went to the house to see her, and she was asking me what was going on with the Barbara Bush Foundation. She still cared.
Well, and she was just about reading. Just read. Doesn't really matter whether it was Jane Austen or Mary Higgins Clark. Just read, you know? That was her whole point, that literature is one of those foundations that brings us together as a people. Those who are the best read go places that others don't get to go.
She felt it was the passport to the world.
Yes.
She just felt that reading was the key to so much of what we struggled with as a society. And of course, she's right. She was always right. Let's face it.
I think it's an old quote that it's nice to be important, but it's more important to be nice. Ms. Bush had a thing or two to say about being too important.
She really did not like people who felt they were better than others or too self-important. And one of their friends and neighbors in Kennebunkport really managed to highlight how she felt about how you live your life with this rather interesting little story. This is Ashley O'Neill, who lives in Kennebunkport, Maine in the summertime. The lesson I learned from Mrs. Bush is that you are never too important a person in this world. She demonstrated this to me one early morning when we were walking slowly the Kennebunk Beach with Sammy, my Norwich Terrier, and her two dogs, Minnie and BB. I spotted a very large deposit from a very large dog in her path. And I said, "Watch out for that, Mrs. Bush." Instead of veering around it, she slowly stopped and dug deep to find an extra poop bag and proceeded to bend over and clean up the giant pile, while I turned my back and couldn't watch. To this day, I still marvel and reflect on that moment. The former First Lady of the United States cleaned up someone else's dog poop.
Comes with having 6 children.
Exactly. That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Thank you for putting all of this together. It's really delightful. It's a great read. It's a book I'll remember for, I think, the rest of my life.
Oh, Frank, I love that. Thank you.
He was a finalist on America's Got Talent and is the star of Connecting, a new comedy on NBC about life, love, and lockdown. Please welcome comedian Preacher Lawson.
Preacher, your real name? Yeah, Preacher's my name. When I was 2 weeks old, a bunch of people my mom had never met before, was like, when he gets older, he's going to be a preacher. He's going to be a pastor. That's what they sing to me at 2 weeks old. I don't know what I was saying at 2 weeks old to give them, what kind of tongue was I speaking in? Goo goo gaga, goo, can I get a wow? Like, I don't know if I was changing my mom's milk into wine. I don't remember, but why is he walking on his bathtub water? I don't know, but when I tell people my name is Preacher, everyone always hears Preacher, but they think of different names on their own. They're like, what's your name? My name is Preacher. Richard? No. Clearly started with a P. Preston? I'm black, man. You know my name ain't Preston. There's no such thing as a black Preston. And if there is one, there's one. And it's probably called Black Preston, okay? That's how it goes. I don't make the rules up. That's like a white dude named Jamal. He's white Jamal, all right? Where's Jamal at? I don't know no Jamal. White Jamal. Oh, yeah, man. Everybody, come on. And I don't like flying. I don't really like, especially now. I like flying. I got in an argument with the flight attendant. She wouldn't let me use the restroom. I was like, I gotta pee. She's like, you can't go because the seatbelt sign is on, which means there's about to be turbulence. I'm like, oh, that actually means I should go now because the plane is gonna shake with a full bladder. I'm peeing in that bathroom or I'm peeing in row 11F. It's up to you, right? And I sat in 18F, but I didn't like the way the dude in 11F was looking at me. I'm like, I pee on you, bro. Stop looking at me like that. And she was like, you can't go, and it made me mad. And I would never hurt a woman on purpose, right? So I just left my foot in the eye, right? Thinking like I was sleeping and let the Lord do his work. And I waited till she came back with that snap cop, right? I was going tripping, man. Anyway, so, and then you got people that jump up as soon as the plane lands, like, oh, let me save 11 seconds so I can go to the same baggage claim. I'm going to the same place. That's like cutting somebody off in traffic to get to a red light. That's what you do. You just meet them, oh, snap, I thought I lost you. All right. Okay. And I gotta turn right. I can't even look that way. I don't even like animals. People think I like animals like that. Y'all like animals more than I do. I feel like people like dogs more than they like people. People like dogs more. You know what I mean? Because I can't, bro, if I can't do what a dog does to you, I can't just walk up to you like, hey, random stranger I never met before. I want to lick you in the face! Dogs are just adorable crackheads. That's all they are. Come on, man! I just want one of this! Say hi to me, sniff my booty, get in there! Say hi! How long you had that leg for? That's a nice little leg right there. I ain't never seen a leg that nice. What if I was so excited to see you, I peed on myself, huh? Like, did you just pee on yourself? I thought you were gone forever, man. It's been 30 minutes. Thank you for standing up for literacy with the Barbara Bush Houston Literacy Foundation.
3 years ago, the Barbara Bush Houston Literacy Foundation partnered with the University of Houston's College of Education on an initiative called the Third Ward Schools Initiative, focused right outside the neighborhood in which the university is located. We are focused intensely on boosting literacy and life outcomes for children.
At the University of Houston, the College of Ed put together a phenomenal program working with our district partner, HISD, and working with the schools, and then also with our experts at the university, and it's called Cougar Literacy Corps.
It's an amazing partnership. These are students from the University of Houston that my elementary scholars think are the world. They are able to get in groups of 3 or 5 kids and read with them, do guided reading lessons with them, do intervention lessons with them, and build relationships with them. And we love them. It's the best program in the world. Blackshear was a improvement required campus, the longest running in Houston Independent School District at one point, 6 years. And we went from an F to a B, and we are on our pathway to an A.
In 2020, there is no option. We need to provide a pathway for every child to read and write at a competence level that provides them success in life.
He's worked as a lawyer and a politician, but you know him best as an internationally acclaimed author who has sold so many books, it seems they stopped counting at 300 million. John Grisham's brand new book, A Time for Mercy, is out this month. It's the 3rd book featuring his well-known character, Jake Brigance. John, my pleasure, extreme pleasure to talk to you today, sir. Longtime fans are going to remember Jake from A Time to Kill, also Sycamore Row. He's now a character that's been part of your storytelling for 30 years. What inspired you to bring him back for another book?
Well, first of all, Keith, delighted to be here. I'm excited about publishing A Time for Mercy. As you said, the 3rd book featuring Jake. I love the locale where Ford County, where the book takes place. That's kind of home for me. That's where I'm from. I love the characters who surround Jake. I would love to tell more stories from that little piece of earth down there. But, you know, Jake cannot have a fabulous, sensational murder trial every year. He's a small town lawyer. And also I had to wait, as always, I have to wait till I have a story. I have to wait for the story to come along. I can't always just create a story. I have to be inspired by something that's big enough to sustain a full-length novel. And so it took a long time between 1 and 2. Sycamore Row was 7 years ago, and it's taken 7 years to think of another story. So I can only write the books when the stories show up.
For sure. Now, we know the inspiration for A Time to Kill was actually a real case. And since you still keep a close eye on the legal world and you have your attorney background, is A Time for Mercy inspired by truth as well?
It's they're all inspired by something true. I'm not smart enough to create all these big plots myself. I have to copy. Writers are thieves. We steal stories and ideas and names and places, and that's what we do. We're always looking for a colorful and exciting, a memorable person or plot device. So yeah, Mercy was partially inspired by a story I heard a long time ago involving a young teenage kid who was having a rough life, and he, in a moment when he shouldn't have done that, he got access to a gun and he pulled the trigger. I've often wondered, you know, how fair is it to put kids on trial for capital murder and death penalty cases when they're so young, but the damage they do is just as the same as if the victim was killed by an adult. So there's very, very tough issues and tough to write about, but I was captivated by the idea.
It doesn't seem you've steered away from social issues in your writing, at times tackling them head on. In real life, you do the same, serving on the board of the Innocence Project. Talk to us about your hope for that initiative.
Well, our mission is very simple. Once you get into innocence work, you realize there are thousands of innocent people in prison and some even on death row. And so as an organization, we litigate from coast to coast, trying to get innocent people out of prison, our clients. We also advance policies with all 50 state legislatures and Congress to try and pass laws that will correct so many problems in our criminal justice system, eliminate so many inequities, and make wrongful convictions very difficult to come about. We have 370 DNA exonerations in the last 25 years, and we're working on a bunch more because we have no shortage of clients in American prisons. It's sad, it's frustrating, it's very, very infuriating sometimes, the work we have to do to get innocent people out. And but that's our mission.
You credit one person with pushing you to finish your first book and encouraging you to write a second one before the first was ever a success. After all these years, does your wife ever tell you, "I told you so"? Well, she will certainly say that if she feels it, but she's not one to mince words. We had a discussion yesterday about, I gave her a one-page proposal for the novel I want to write next year. And she read it, and we discussed it. And I don't like to start a book that she doesn't like. And so we kicked it around for a while. This morning, over coffee, I said, "Okay, what do you think about the story?" And she said, "I like it." And so that means I'll write the book next year. So, I mean, that's how involved she gets. Right. And if she doesn't like one, she's not going to hold back. She's going to let me know, and we'll have a little spat. We'll have our words, but I'm not going to fight her too hard on it. One of the secrets to marriage for us husbands is learning just to say "yes, dear." They're smarter than we are. Indeed, indeed. If I may tell a quick story, the first Barbara Bush literacy big fancy dinner in Houston, I think it was 25 years ago. I was there for the first one, and when dinner was over, I sat with Big Bush, former President George H.W. Bush, and we sat and had a beer at the table and talked about his baseball playing days at Yale, and just talked about it in the Houston Astros, Jeff Bagwell and the team. And it was just a moment I've always treasured, is sitting there talking to President Bush about baseball. Yeah. You're welcome to come back to Houston anytime. I have a lot of friends there. I love Houston.
Our next authors have quite the resumes. Children's series Instant Sensation, Mega Texas Bishop, award winner in 5 genres, and world's most prolific author. They've joined us to share their personal reflections on life and literacy.
Why do we teach our kids to read, right? We teach them that because we show them possibilities.
Reading unlocks the world. It's really important for a kid to be able to pick up a book and to see themselves in the characters.
It takes the handcuffs off the possibilities that you can have, that you can do, that you can be, that you can become.
Anyone who's a parent knows, we tell your kid to be good, they're not going to be good. But you tell them a story, you show them an example, you show them an opportunity. That's something that's remembered forever. I learned that from the best of us. I learned that from Barbara Bush herself.
I think books are such an important tool for empathy, and I think we are living in a time when empathy is in very short supply. So read as much as you can because you'll be much better off for it.
It's a lesson that she's taught millions of kids around the world. Now are the lucky recipients of that message. They've read thousands of books, millions of books in her honor.
When you open up a book, my friend, you open up your future. So I want to encourage you to join in with this. Get a good book, sit down in a corner, and have yourself a real good read. Because if you do, you have a real good future.
Right now, over half the children in this country aren't reading at grade level. That's a tragedy, especially in the world's richest country. We can stop illiteracy among our children. Let's do it.
We believe volunteers change lives. Through Read Houston Read and Reading Roundup, hundreds of caring adults each year are serving as reading mentors, online or in person, to elementary school children across our city, igniting a love of reading and giving kids the extra help they need to achieve.
When we bring community members in and give them an opportunity, whether it's once a month as a Reading Roundup volunteer or every week as a Spring Branch reading buddy, it broadens kids' ideas of what a book, of what literacy, and of what storytelling can really bring to them as they think about how they connect with and learn about the world through the pages of a book.
It helps me read and it helps me learn.
Teaching a child how to read is a priceless gift and one that will last a lifetime.
We invite you to open the world of possibilities for a child by becoming a reading mentor.
Each of us has the ability to change a life and make Houston an example for other cities in making literacy for all a reality. Here to share more about our city's vision for the future is Mayor Sylvester Turner.
Hello, this is Mayor Sylvester Turner. The vitality and vibrancy of our city's economy and the prosperity and well-being of our fellow citizens are directly dependent upon our ability to foster a culture that embraces education and literacy as top priorities. We must unite to establish a system of high-quality literacy programs and resources that lift individuals and families out of the darkness of poverty and drives overall success of our communities. Literacy is a key to unlocking the potential of our city and for everyone who calls Houston home. Time and time again, you have demonstrated that we have the strength, grit, and determination to face what oftentimes seem like insurmountable challenges. Yet, we overcome them. Whether it be the unprecedented floods caused by Hurricane Harvey or the current coronavirus global pandemic, Houstonians rise. I believe that together, we can be the first city to eradicate low literacy and break the intergenerational cycle of poverty. I invite you to join the Barbara Bush Houston Literacy Foundation and the Mayor's Office for Adult Literacy in our quest to make Houston a city filled with readers. Thank you for changing lives and ensuring that Houston thrives.
And now, the legendary Lee Greenwood with the Houston Children's Chorus.
So here is my song, God Bless the USA, to honor our former First Lady, Barbara Bush. If tomorrow all the things were gone, I've worked for all my life, and I had to start again with just my children and my wife. I thank my lucky stars to be living here today, 'cause the flag still stands for freedom, and they can't take that away. And I'm proud to be an American, where at least Minnesota to the hills of Tennessee, across the plains of Texas, from sea to shining sea, from Detroit down to Houston and New York to LA. There's pride in every American heart, and it's time we stand and say that I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me. And I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA. And I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me. And I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the
Every American deserves an opportunity to learn how to read and succeed in life. Join the Barbara Bush Houston Literacy Foundation on its mission to make literacy for all a reality. God bless you, and God bless the USA.
Thank you for joining us to celebrate the power of reading. We are grateful to the generous donors and extraordinary people who made this program possible. Good night.